How do you keep your rentals full? How do you keep your rentals full in the winter? What happens if you have somebody buy a home and you're happy for them, but now you have a vacancy? What are the things you should be doing? Rentals are slowing down. We're going to talk with Casey from Brick by Brick and really get behind the scenes of what you should be doing. Casey, how are you?
I'm doing good, Michael. I think this is a very timely topic. We've got winter approaching. I've already got my scarf and my long sleeve shirt. It's a slow time of year for properties to get rented. And I know even in some of the colder areas, East Coast, Midwest, a lot of property management companies and landlords put in their lease agreement that there are no move outs available, like allowed during, November to March, because it would be really hard to get a tenant in there. Nobody wants to move when it's snowing. So, and I also know that one of the big fears people have for even buying rentals in the first place is they're afraid no one's going to rent it, which I think is a silly fear, but I guess it depends on where you buy them. So very timely topic. And I will say there's a list of things that if you already have your rental that we can talk about what to do if you're concerned or it's not renting. But one thing I want to talk about first is before you even buy a rental property, this is a good question and it's a good fear to have, is what happens if I can't get my property rented? Well, my answer to that is you will have no problem getting your property rented if you buy in the right location. And they say location, location, location. And it's true. Whether you buy out in the boonies in the middle of nowhere, that makes a difference, or you buy closer to town, but you buy in the wrong part of town. All of those types of location makes a difference. So I don't know if we want to maybe talk about location first.
No, I think there's a lot of truth in that. Again, when I think about all the investors I've talked to, and it's been thousands now over the last couple of decades, sometimes people get enamored with the Excel spreadsheet, but they forget that the house lives in the real world. And yes, there are sometimes if you have a house on street A versus street B, it'll be very different. It will behave different. And they could be very close together geographically. Maybe you're investing in a market you don't live in, so you don't know that. But yeah, there is some certainty that houses in the nicer areas, all else being equal, will rent quicker. And oh, by the way, have generally speaking longer stays, right? They'll stay longer. So yeah, location is absolutely a one thing to start with for sure.
And to be even more specific on location, well, what does that mean, location? Like I said, first of all, buying out in the middle of nowhere. I get people all the time that say, oh, there's a new development out of town and I'm going to buy, build to rents are very popular, especially right now, but you just got to be careful where the build to rent is. If it is too far from town, from where people live, eat, work, play, all those things, they're not going to see the allure of driving 45 minutes. A lot of times the new builds that are kind of out there are more affordable. Yes, but they are also far. And so if you are going to buy to live in it, to make it your primary, making that sacrifice of it's a cheaper property, but but it's far. So that's my sacrifice. I can afford a nicer place, but I have to far drive. Tenants don't care about that as much. It's not their property. They don't want to live 45 minutes from town. So think about distance as far as location. And like you mentioned, the nicer properties, absolutely. That's why, like in my cake method, I'm harping on B-class properties when you can afford them, and C-class if not, but that's not the end all be all. Buying in an area where you will always have demand is crucial, because when you buy long-term rental properties, it isn't just for year one cash flow. It isn't just for today. It's for next year and the year after. And next year marks 10 years, a decade of me being a landlord, if you can believe that. Nice. And I'm going to probably say that like several more times because I'm just so excited about it that I get to say decade. But I didn't think that I never thought what it would be like to be a landlord, to be an owner of rental properties for 10 years. And I can tell you that my nicer areas are consistently getting rented much faster, much easier, able to increase the rent and do all those things. So buying in the better areas, will definitely make your property, more desirable property. People will want to rent it and all that. So I would think about that first before you buy a rental. But now, Michael, maybe let's talk about if you already have a rental, it's winter, maybe it's vacant. What can you do to increase occupancy?
Yeah, one of the things that is a subtle twist that I learned actually during the worst time to be a landlord, which is 05, 06, when people were buying homes and not renting, was, and I've done it for the last 20 years, is when I have a vacancy or frankly, I'm doing a flip, I actually spend a fair amount of time on what I'll call the front landscaping, especially if it's a house. Because here's the deal. It doesn't matter if it's got granite and, trim and all these other things inside the house. If you can't get them to stop and get out of the car, it
Yep.
doesn't matter. So again, I will, and typically when I do flips, I'll do the front yard first because I like nothing more than to sell the house before it's done. And if you can just dress up, and it doesn't even take a lot of money. Sometimes it's just trim back the trees in the bush and, water the dirt. I mean,
Yep.
sometimes it's that
Put the
simple,
mulch
right?
down on the flower
Yeah,
beds.
mulch, exactly. And
Yep.
yeah, one of the things that I've seen people struggle with is they go right to cutting rent. But if you haven't made it welcoming from the street, maybe spend a couple of $100 dressing it up. And again, it doesn't take a lot. Paint the door, dress up, cut the trees back so you can see it. Clean the windows. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, people. Let's think about being a tenant driving by and they're looking at 7 houses and yours is one of them. If your house looks the nicest from the street, you got the best chance of them getting out of the car and then seeing inside. So
Yep.
that's one thing I think a lot of newbies miss.
Yeah. One thing I think too is people cheap out on photos. Now, I get it. We've got all these fancy phones and they take very high quality photos, even better than, my old DSLR that I had, like my dad gave me,
Mm.
15 years ago. My camera, my phone takes better pictures, but not everybody is a better picture taker, like good
Yeah.
picture. You've like gone somewhere, right, with your wife and said, "Hey, take a picture of us standing in front of this cool thing." And you get the picture, you're like, "This is terrible." Some people just have a knack, an eye for space and, all the
Mhm.
things. And, one thing when my husband takes pictures for us, when I don't, he's 6 feet tall and I'm 5'2". And so his photos always look like I'm looking down at the things. And I'm like, you've got to now that could just be preference because my point of view of life is different than his way up tall. So when he takes pictures straight on, they look like they're pointing
Yeah,
down. And I like kind of a mid height thing for things. So what my point here is, before you go dropping the rent, which I agree might be necessary,
sure.
check your photos first because photos are everything, and people aren't first. Often, sometimes they aren't driving by to look at your property. They're looking at online, on Zillow, on Facebook. And if you can't even get someone to like your pictures enough to call to say they want
Mhm.
a showing, I
Yeah,
mean, you've
good
already
point.
lost all the people right there. So recheck your pictures. Spend the money and hire someone if you can't take good pictures. Make sure you don't take pictures on a cloudy day, when it's
Mhm.
raining, when you have trash in the yard. Close the
Yeah,
toilet seat, turn all the lights on, open the blinds, natural light. And even when I do all of those things, I'm still putting my pictures in Photoshop or Lightroom after. I don't even care how good my picture is. I can make it better
yeah,
when I edit it. So I don't want to, I don't want to show an incorrect, picture
yeah,
of, what the property is. I don't want to do that to oversell it, but I can brighten it up. I can straighten it out. I can crop out, the door frame, whatever. I can do some things in Lightroom or Adobe to make my photos look really good so that I get a lot of calls initially. So check
yeah.
photos, check photos.
Yeah, the next thing I'll tell you is, especially in a slow market like we are today, unlike maybe 2022, is don't give a good tenant a reason to move, right? Some of you are out there raising rents, every month or every year, not realizing that the market has changed. And the market today is very different, right? I would not recommend most landlords raise rents right now, certainly heading into the winter, right? It's not that season. I don't think I've raised rents in the last 12 months, right, in my market. In fact, I can remember of a couple houses we've had to reduce rents. So again, sometimes it's about not giving a good tenant a reason to look. So again, this is the time of year where maybe you don't even raise rents and you kind of like, hey, let's sign a 6-month lease. Let's get us to the spring or something. So again, sometimes you could be a little more strategic about when your lease is renewal and things like that.
Yeah, agree. And even to make what you just said even better, what I was going to say, which is perfect, that you just said, this is to before, okay, before 30 days is up, right? You got 30-day renewal coming up, whatever. The guy's going to, expire in the next month. don't wait till the last minute to
Yeah.
talk to your tenants, right? Because you don't want to give them, like you said, a reason to move out. So if you catch them way in advance, before they're even thinking about, oh, I'm going to move out. Oh, let's see what's around. Let's see what's available. Catch them. I mean, I don't agree. I don't always do this, but I try, right? I put it in my Google Calendar. I live and die by that. Several months in advance, reach out to so-and-so. Do they want to renew? I'll reach out 3 months in advance or more, 3 or 4 months, depending upon the
Nice.
time of year. I have someone that is up for renewal in December, and I talked to them in August, end of July or August, and said, hey, just throw it out there. You guys don't want to renew? Yes, great. So they're getting a little late on my part, but the renewal, they already said, yes, they're going to renew. I told them I wasn't going to raise their rent. So they have no reason to go look around,
Exactly. Yep.
When you do consistent lease renewals every single year. And I'm really against that, to be honest, because, gosh, this is getting off topic, but if you want to raise your rent by $25, big deal. What if the tenant says, screw you, I'm out? Now you have a whole month of lost rent. That could be $1,000 or $2,000. Now divide that $25 by the month that you lost. It's 3 years to break even, to make that money back. It's just not worth it to be that, quote, greedy landlord and always raise the rents, So if the tenants, you're providing them good customer service and you're fixing things on time and you're keeping things in good repair and you're a good communicator, that means a lot for tenants and they'll want to stay. And if you can tell them in advance before they're even thinking about looking around, hey, what do you think about renewing? Everything looks good here. I won't renew your rent. I won't up your rent this year. Would you want to renew? Yeah, great. Awesome. Thanks. I'll send you a lease renewal, in a couple of weeks, and you can sign as early as you want. Doesn't matter. But if you can give them reason to move out, they will. But you don't want them thinking about it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, let's get to the big elephant in the room. Again, sometimes rents are just too high. Again, you could lower asking rents. I've also played with deposits, right? Sometimes half deposits. Even in the bad times in 06, I did $99 deposits. It was so bad. But again, you can play with first, you can do what apartments are doing, right? For, rent for a year, get 13 months, so you get the last month free. I mean, there's lots of things you could do to entice someone. Not where I would start by any means, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Sometimes when you've already listed it too high and it's been on for a while, sometimes it's just too late. And you're going to have to really drop it because now it's been on for a while. So what I say, if you have to renew or list a property for rent during the winter or whatever, a bad time in the market, it doesn't have to be the winter. It could just be your market's not renting very quickly. Really do your research and see what is the competition, what is active for rent right now. Look at Zillow and see how long your property's been on the market for rent. Look at their price history. How many price decreases have they had for their rents? And say, okay, well, according, if I'm comparing all these ones that are out there to mine objectively, what really should my property rent for? And the more properties on the market, the longer they're on the market, the more you're competing, the harder it's going to be for yours to rent. People will see yours within the first 2 weeks, just like a property for sale. And that is the exciting time. If it's been on for months, they think something's wrong with it. Same thing with for rent, right? Even for sale, something's wrong with it, whatever. It's been on forever and you're reducing. So before you get to that part, look at the competition and see what really should my property be rent for. And if you had to pick a price that if I rented it today for this price, it would rent out in a week, that is the price you should list it for, so that you're not competing against all the people. Because remember what I just said about the $25 a month versus the month of lost rent. This isn't the time to be greedy if properties are sitting and they're not renting. You need to rent yours below market, and that is that. You want to rent it below market, you want to get somebody in right away, and you want to pick cream of the crop tenants, which means you don't want to rent it, put it high, and then wait 3 weeks to find out you have to drop it. You want to put it at a very competitive price first and attract cream of the crop tenants so you can pick the best one. You still want, quote, a bidding war on your properties. You want to receive multiple applications in the first week. Good way to do that is host an open house. That's what I found. That's a really good way for rentals. Instead of booking all these separate appointments that people are going to cancel on anyway, do an open house on Saturday from 2 to 4 o'clock. And it's a rental open house. And everyone that inquires about your property, say, we're doing showings Tuesday or, Saturday from 2 to 4, Saturday 2 to 4. and get everyone there saying, oh my gosh, FOMO, like all these people want this property, I better get it in, and it's a good price, it's going to go quick. So you have to play those mind games with people and list it below market, slightly below market. And another little quick tip I have is, when you're listing it, the numbers matter. Just like how Walmart ends everything in a 7. Okay. There
Mhm.
are mental reasons for that. So think wisely about the number. Don't list something for $1,500 a month. Okay. It's got a 5 there. You want to have a 4. So $1,475, $1,495. That $5 off, people are going to think it's in the 1,400s, not in the 1,500s. So little mind games like that will help it rent faster too.
Love it. Casey, do you have any last ones, or where can people find you?
Oh gosh, last ones. I guess the last one I would just say is, don't get yourself in that position to where you're having to lower rent. Really think about it in advance. Don't be in a rush. And here's a really good piece of advice. Just because you might be scared your property is not renting, or you're worried it might not rent, don't pick anyone to rent your
Yes.
place because you're worried you won't get any more tenants.
Yeah.
I would
Vacancy is
rather
better
have
than a bad tenant. Yes.
I would rather have no tenants than a bad tenant. And you,
Amen.
in your gut, you immediately know if this person is right for your property or not. Don't fudge on all of the qualifications. Go, well, this, well, that, I'll let him in. Oh, I might not get anybody else. Don't
Mhm.
do that. Rather hold it through the winter time, okay, than put something that
Absolutely.
doesn't deserve to be there. So that's my last piece of advice. People can find me on YouTube, Brick by Brick Wealth. On Instagram, Brick by Brick Wealth. If you want to see what I'm up to, you can check out my website, Brick by Brick Wealth.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.